The millionaire CEO saw his ex-wife again, but the twins called him Dad. Hi, my beautiful souls. I'm your storyteller, James. Welcome to my brand new channel, a place where every story carries a heartbeat, a tear, and a second chance. Many of you have been with me from Beyond Color Stories, and I just want to say thank you. You believed in me, you felt my stories, and you gave them life. Without your love and support, I am nothing, and I mean that from the deepest part of my heart. This new journey, this new home, is not just mine, it's ours. Here we'll walk through stories of love, betrayal, pain, and redemption. Stories that touch the soul and remind us that no matter how dark life gets, love always finds a way back. So please, my family, support me once again. Subscribe, share, and stay with me like you always have, because every like, every comment, every heart keeps this dream alive. Welcome home, my beautiful souls. Let's begin our new journey together. The city pulsed with rain that night, the kind that made glass towers glow like mirrors to people's sins. Inside one of those towers, Liam Blake, the man whose name made investors hold their breath, watched the world from behind tinted glass. He didn't believe in accidents. Everything in his life was strategy, precision, and control. Then Zara Ellis walked in, quiet, graceful, brown skin, glowing like the warmth his life had never known. She wasn't loud or ambitious like the others. She came to work, did her job, smiled politely, and disappeared like a whisper. But something about her silence kept echoing in his head long after she left his office. At first, he told himself it was curiosity. She was new, different, too grounded for the sharp edges of his world. But the more he noticed her, the more that curiosity burned into distraction. Every meeting became a test of self-control. The way she tucked her curls behind her ear, the way her voice softened when she read from a report. It unsettled him. He had power over hundreds of employees, yet she was the only one who made him lose focus. His secretary caught him once, staring through the glass partition, watching Zara explain a project to her team. He brushed it off, but even then, he knew the truth. He wasn't watching her work. He was watching the calm he'd been missing. Weeks passed, deadlines, meetings, awards, all blurred. But she didn't. She became the rhythm between his routines, the softness between his sharp words. One evening, when most of the office lights had gone out, she stayed behind to finish a report. Liam did too, though he didn't need to. Their first real conversation wasn't about work. It was about why she worked so hard. She told him she wanted to prove something, not to the world, but to herself. "People see my skin before they see my mind," she said softly. "So I just keep showing up until they can't ignore my results." He didn't know what to say. In that moment, he saw a kind of strength he'd never earned, a strength built on surviving quiet dismissals and still showing grace. The rain hit harder outside. He offered her a ride home. She hesitated, but the storm made the decision for her. That drive was silent, charged. The city lights flickered through the windows as if reflecting the words neither of them dared to say. When he stopped in front of her building, she turned to thank him. For a moment their eyes met, long enough for him to forget the difference between right and wrong. The next morning, something shifted. Their greetings became softer. Their glances lasted longer. Lunch breaks became moments of accidental laughter. What began as kindness turned into an unspoken attachment, the kind people pretend doesn't exist until it's too late. Rumors started. The office whispered. Liam didn't care. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profit margins or board meetings. He was thinking about a woman who made him want to be someone better. He started finding excuses, urgent project reviews that required her to stay late. Zara tried to keep it professional, but emotions don't follow job descriptions. Her heart betrayed her long before he did. Weeks became months, the boundary blurred like ink in water. Their late-night conversations turned personal, about dreams, fears, and what it means to be lonely even when surrounded by people. He promised her small things, not in words but in gestures, the kind that make a woman believe she's seen, not just used. Then one night, after another long meeting, she told him she'd been offered a better job elsewhere. He froze. The thought of losing her made something raw rise inside him. "Stay," he said, the words slipping out like a confession. That night, they didn't talk about contracts. They talked about feelings. They crossed a line neither of them could uncross. And when the morning came, sunlight didn't feel like redemption. It felt like exposure. Liam tried to return to normal, but guilt crept in. He was a man used to control, and Zara was a mirror showing him how much of it he'd lost. She started avoiding him, sensing the weight in his silence. He chased her attention with cold professionalism, but underneath, he was terrified of needing her more than his empire. Then, one evening, she walked into his office with trembling hands. "Liam, I need to tell you something." Her voice broke halfway through. He already knew before she said it. "I'm pregnant." The world went still. His heart didn't race. It stopped. Everything he had built flashed before him. The headlines, the board, his reputation, the scandal. For a man who could handle billion-dollar crises, that one sentence destroyed him in seconds. He stared at her, the woman who had believed his tenderness meant forever, and said nothing. The fear in his eyes was louder than any words he could have spoken. She reached for him, searching for the man who once cared, but all she found was a wall of silence. That night, he left the office without a word. She followed him into the storm, rain soaking through her clothes, calling his name. "Liam, please." He stopped at the car door. For one fragile second, it looked like he might turn around. But pride won. He opened the door, got in, and drove away, the reflection of her standing in the rain vanishing in his rearview mirror. She fell to her knees on the empty street, whispering his name through the thunder. He never turned back, but the next time he would see her, she wouldn't be alone. The rain didn't stop that night. It soaked through Zara's hair, her clothes, her skin, as if the sky itself wanted to drown the moment she realized he wasn't coming back. She called his name once more, but only the sound of distant thunder answered. When the headlights of his car vanished into the dark, the last bit of warmth in her heart went with them. She stood there until her knees trembled. The city around her kept moving, taxis rushing by, strangers hurrying under umbrellas. But for Zara, time had broken. The man she trusted, the man who whispered forever between kisses, had walked away as if she were nothing but a mistake he needed to erase. By morning, the world looked the same, but everything in her had changed. The office that once felt alive with ambition now felt like a place of ghosts. His absence filled every corridor. Whispers followed her, sharp, judgmental. Some said she'd been foolish to fall for him. Others pitied her in silence. She learned quickly that pity hurt more than gossip. She packed her desk quietly. No one stopped her. She didn't expect them to. Liam Blake had the power to make or unmake anyone's career, and she had been erased. Days bled into weeks. She moved into a smaller apartment on the quieter side of the city, the kind of place where no one asked questions. She found work at a small firm, just enough to keep her going. But every night when the lights went out, she could still hear his voice in the dark, saying her name like it meant something. The sickness started soon after, morning nausea, dizziness, the strange pull beneath her ribs. She ignored it until she couldn't. One trembling visit to the clinic later, her world tilted again. The doctor's words echoed like bells. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." Zara sat there, her hands cold, staring at the sonogram. There was no applause, no joy, only shock, fear, and something deeper she didn't know how to name. She thought of him immediately. His smile, his hands, his betrayal. She walked home under the gray sky, one hand pressed against her stomach. A child. His child. Her heart wanted to cry. Her pride refused. She spent nights arguing with herself. Should she tell him? Should she disappear? But every memory of that night, his cold eyes, his silence, reminded her that he had already made his choice. He didn't want her. He didn't want this. So she stopped waiting. Instead of love letters, she wrote budgets. Instead of dreams, she made plans. Her life became a series of quiet victories, small, hard-won moments no one else saw. Every morning she woke up determined to survive without him. But sometimes she'd catch herself looking at the sonogram again, tracing the tiny curve that was proof of something once real. That child was both her heartbreak and her hope, the last spark of a love that refused to die completely. Months passed, her belly grew, and so did her strength. The loneliness never left, but it changed shape, becoming resolve. She found comfort in little things, the hum of the fridge at night, the rhythm of rain on the window, the faint kick that reminded her she wasn't truly alone. One evening she sat by the window, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the city lights blink like distant stars. She whispered to the life growing inside her, "You're all I have now, but you're enough." Tears burned her eyes but didn't fall. She had cried enough for one lifetime. Across town, Liam Blake was attending a charity gala, champagne in hand, the perfect smile on his lips, photographers calling his name. Every flash of a camera erased another piece of his conscience. He laughed at jokes he didn't hear, shook hands with people he didn't like, and went home to a mansion that echoed with silence. He told himself it was for the best. She would have ruined everything. His reputation, his control, his plans. He had no room for weakness. That was how he justified it. But sometimes, when he closed his eyes, the sound of rain would return, and so would the image of her face, tear-streaked, trembling, and calling his name. He'd open his eyes, pour another drink, and remind himself he had no regrets. But regret doesn't listen to logic. It lingers, waiting for quiet. Meanwhile, Zara prepared for motherhood, alone. The day of the ultrasound came again, a blur of soft beeps and gentle smiles from nurses who didn't know her story. On the screen, the baby moved, tiny hands, tiny feet, a heartbeat steady and strong. Her throat tightened. The doctor smiled. "Would you like to hear it?" She nodded, unable to speak. The sound filled the room, fast, rhythmic, alive. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. That night, lying in bed, she pressed her hand to her belly. "Your father made his choice," she whispered softly, "but I'll make mine." "We don't need him," she smiled faintly, a smile of defiance, of survival. But when she turned off the light, her tears finally came, silent and unstoppable. Not because she missed him, but because love, once pure, had become a wound that refused to heal. As lightning flashed outside her window, Zara whispered a vow into the dark. "I'll never forgive you, Liam Blake." But somewhere far away, he stirred awake from a dream, her voice echoing in his mind, as if fate itself had heard her promise. The years that followed hardened Liam Blake into a legend. The world called him brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable, the man who built an empire from dust and turned every handshake into gold. His face filled magazines, his name whispered in boardrooms with awe and fear. The tabloids crowned him the untouchable CEO. But beneath that flawless armor, there was a silence he couldn't shake, a silence that sometimes sounded like rain. He told himself he had moved on, that the woman with brown skin and quiet eyes was just a chapter that ended. Yet, every success carried an ache he couldn't name. No matter how high he climbed, something inside him refused to celebrate. At night, when the lights of the city glowed against the glass of his penthouse, he would stand with a glass of scotch, staring at the skyline. The reflection in the window was everything he had ever wanted: power, control, prestige. But he often wondered why it felt so empty. He had traded something sacred for this view. He dated women, beautiful, polished, ambitious, the kind who understood that love wasn't part of the contract. They laughed at his jokes, wore his gifts, stayed until morning, then disappeared. He preferred it that way. No questions, no promises, no softness. But sometimes, when one of them would brush her hair behind her ear, the motion would hit him. A memory of her, Zara, and he would freeze, the air turning thick with something he refused to name. To everyone else, he was flawless. The media adored his discipline, his charity galas, his perfectly pressed suits. But the people who worked close to him knew that something about Liam Blake was untouchable, not because of arrogance, but because of sorrow. His assistant Clara had once described him in a whisper. He smiles like a man who forgot how. 4 years passed that way, smooth, controlled, and utterly hollow. Then, one morning, a spark of change entered his day, disguised as a routine meeting. He sat in his corner office, reviewing quarterly reports, the city stretching wide behind him. Clara stepped in, her usual brisk tone softened with curiosity. "Sir, there's a new business consultant joining us today. She's been assigned to lead the corporate restructuring. Her background's impressive." He didn't look up. "Handle the introductions." "I'm not interested in small talk." Clara hesitated. "Understood." "But you might want to be." Her tone made him glance up, brow furrowing. "Why?" Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. 2 soft, steady taps. The door opened. For the first time in years, Liam Blake's heartbeat faltered. Zara Ellis stepped inside. She wasn't the trembling woman he remembered in the rain, the one whose tears had burned holes in his conscience. The woman standing before him now was poised, radiant and untouchable in her own right. Her brown skin glowed softly under the morning light, her eyes calm but sharp, the eyes of a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. She didn't look away, not for a second. "Mr. Blake," she said evenly, her voice like silk, stretched over steel. "It's been a while." His chest tightened. That voice, he had tried to forget it, drown it, replace it, but it returned with every syllable, dragging him back to the night he walked away. Clara sensed the tension and quietly excused herself, closing the door behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Liam forced himself to stand, though his body felt heavy. "Zara," he said her name like it was a memory, not a word. She smiled faintly, polite, distant. "You remember? Impressive." He swallowed. "I didn't know you were alive," she finished, her gaze never wavering. "Working? Successful. You didn't care enough to find out." The words landed like blades, precise and calm. She didn't shout. She didn't tremble. That composure cut deeper than any anger could. He tried to recover, reaching for the cold comfort of professionalism. "This is unexpected. The firm didn't mention." "They wouldn't," she said simply. "They hired me for what I can do, not for who I once was." He studied her then, really studied her. Her posture was confident, her clothes sharp, elegant but simple. Everything about her screamed independence. Yet there was a quiet pain beneath her calm, a story in her eyes that begged to be read and feared to be known. Something twisted in his chest. "You look different." She tilted her head. "So do you. Success looks good on you, Liam." Then, after a pause that made his throat dry, she added softly, "Does it feel good too?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. She smiled, not cruelly but knowingly, and began unpacking her files. Her professionalism was flawless, but the air between them carried years of unfinished sentences. Liam tried to focus on the reports, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. The rhythm of her breathing, the click of her pen, the faint trace of jasmine that hadn't changed. Every detail dragged him back into memories he thought he'd buried. The hotel room laughter, the softness of her hand in his, the whisper of love he had called weakness. And beneath it all, something darker stirred, guilt, thick and suffocating. Zara, meanwhile, refused to look at him again. She was composed, almost cold, as if he were nothing more than another client. But inside, her pulse raced. Being in the same room as him was a test she hadn't prepared for. His scent, his presence, everything came rushing back like a wave she had spent years outrunning. But she wouldn't let him see it. Not after what he did. For the rest of the meeting, they spoke through numbers and strategy, pretending they weren't sitting on the ruins of their past. Every sentence felt like walking a tightrope over memories. When the clock struck noon, she gathered her papers neatly. "I'll have the preliminary audit on your desk tomorrow morning." He nodded, trying to find something to say, anything that would break through the formality strangling him. "Zara, wait." She stopped at the door, her back to him. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Why did you come back?" For a moment she didn't move. Then she turned, eyes sharp as glass. "Who said I came back for you?" The air between them crackled, the kind of silence that feels alive, heavy with everything unsaid. She walked out, leaving the faintest trace of her perfume and the storm that had been sleeping in his chest for 4 years, fully awake. Liam stood frozen by his desk, his heart pounding against the quiet. Her voice still echoed in his ears, calm, distant, final. But when he turned toward the window, something caught his eye. A photo frame that had fallen from the shelf. Inside was a press clipping. Liam Blake, the untouchable CEO. And in the reflection of the glass he saw his own eyes, hollow, haunted, and, for the first time in years, afraid. The office lights hummed softly, the city sprawled below like a restless sea of glass and gold. Liam hadn't moved since Zara left the room. Her scent still lingered faintly in the air, haunting him more than any memory ever could. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger, a man who had everything except peace. The next morning he arrived earlier than usual, hoping to anchor himself in work. The boardroom was quiet, sterile, safe, until the door opened and Zara walked in again, her stride measured, her gaze steady. She wasn't the woman he once left crying in the rain. She was someone else now, someone untouchable, almost regal in her control. She greeted everyone at the table with polite professionalism, her tone smooth and confident. When her eyes finally landed on him, it was brief, clinical, detached, as if he were simply another executive to manage, not the man who had broken her heart. Liam felt his pulse stumble. He wanted to say her name, to apologize, to tell her how wrong he had been. But surrounded by investors and analysts, all he could do was watch her move through the meeting like a storm contained in silk. She spoke clearly, powerfully, with a quiet authority that silenced the room. Her presentation sliced through numbers and strategies, exposing flaws his team had missed. Every time she challenged him, her words carried an edge. Not hostility, but truth sharpened by betrayal. He should have been impressed. Instead, he was undone. Zara stood at the head of the table, her hands resting lightly on the polished wood. "The company's expansion into Eastern Europe was rushed," she said. "There's an over-reliance on short-term gain." "You're building profit, not stability." Liam leaned forward, forcing his voice steady. "And your recommendation?" Her eyes flicked to him, unreadable. "Slow down. Rebuild with purpose, or watch it all collapse, just like you did with people who trusted you." The words hit harder than any business critique could. The others in the room shifted uncomfortably, sensing something deeper beneath the surface, but too afraid to name it. Liam clenched his jaw, pretending the comment was purely professional. "Duly noted," he murmured, though his pulse thudded in his throat. Zara turned back to her slides as if nothing had happened, but for the first time her voice wavered slightly, a fracture so small only he noticed. Beneath that polished armor there was still something raw, fragile, and familiar. When the meeting adjourned, people began filing out, murmuring polite compliments. Liam stayed behind. He needed to speak to her, needed something to change the air between them. "Zara," he said softly as she gathered her papers. She didn't look up. "Mr. Blake," he winced. "Please, don't call me that." She sighed, finally meeting his eyes. "What do you want, Liam?" He hesitated. The question was simple. The answer wasn't. "I want to explain." Her laugh was quiet but cold. "Explain what?" "How you disappeared when I needed you. How you decided I didn't fit your world." He stepped closer, voice low. "I made a mistake." She closed her folder with a soft click. "You made a choice." The room felt smaller suddenly, heavy with the gravity of everything unspoken. He searched her face for even a flicker of softness, but her expression remained composed, unshakable. "You don't owe me forgiveness," he whispered. I never stopped thinking about you." Her breath caught for half a second, but she recovered fast. "Thinking is easy. Facing what you did, that's harder." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up, a soft chime breaking the tension. She glanced at it instinctively, and that's when he saw it. A photograph. Two little children. Maybe 3, 4 years old. One boy, one girl. Both with curls dark as midnight, and eyes the exact same shade of gray as his. The air left his lungs. For a moment, everything in the world went quiet. The city beyond the glass, the faint hum of the projector, even his own heartbeat. Zara's hand froze on the phone, realizing too late what he'd seen. "Zara," his voice broke. "Who are they?" She slipped the phone into her bag, her expression tightening. "That's none of your concern." He stood, disbelief burning through him. They look like me," her jaw clenched. "Coincidence." "Don't lie to me," he said, his tone low but trembling. "Please don't." She turned toward the door, refusing to meet his eyes. "Some truths come too late, Liam. Go back to your perfect world. Leave mine alone." He took a step after her. "Zara, tell me, are they mine?" She paused in the doorway, her shoulders stiff, her breath uneven. For a second he thought she might turn around, that she might tell him everything. But she didn't. Without a word, she walked out, leaving the door open behind her. He stood there, staring at the empty space where she'd been, his chest tight with panic and a dawning terror he couldn't name. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, traffic moving, phones ringing. But inside that room, Liam Blake's empire began to crack. He looked down at the polished table, and for the first time his reflection didn't look untouchable. It looked afraid. Liam whispered into the silence, almost to himself. "They look like me." And for the first time in years his hands began to shake. The air outside the boardroom felt heavier than before, thick with the weight of words left unsaid. Liam followed Zara down the corridor, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors that had once been his kingdom. But now he felt like a trespasser in her world. She didn't turn around, didn't slow down. Her heels clicked sharply, every step cutting through his silence like a blade. "Zara," he called, voice breaking through the hush of the hallway. She stopped, shoulders stiff, back straight. Slowly she turned, eyes colder than the city's winter skyline. "What do you want, Mr. Blake?" she asked, her tone polished, distant, a stranger's voice wearing her face. He flinched, The formality stung more than any insult. "I just need to know." "There's nothing for you to know," she interrupted, clutching her phone tighter, the screen still lit with the image of two smiling children. His gaze dropped to it again, heart pounding in disbelief. "They look like me," he whispered, as if saying it too loud would make it untrue. Her expression faltered for a heartbeat, just one. Then it hardened again. "They're mine. That's all you need to know." She turned and walked away, and for the first time in years, Liam Blake, the man who could buy silence, command empires, and bury scandals, felt utterly powerless. He followed her outside the glass doors, ignoring the stares of employees who sensed something raw unfolding. The city air hit him like punishment. "Zara, please," he said, catching up. "You can't just drop something like that and walk away." "I did once," she said bitterly. "Now you know how it feels." He winced, the truth carving through him deeper than he expected. "Just tell me, were they mine?" She stopped walking, her hand trembling slightly at her side. "You forfeited the right to ask that question the night you left." A silence fell between them, filled only by the city's chaos, horns, footsteps, voices, all fading into background noise around their storm. He studied her face, searching for softness, for forgiveness, for something familiar. But her eyes had learned to live without him. "Zara, you should have told me." She laughed, a sound without joy. "And what would you have done, Liam?" "Left your board meeting to hold my hand in the delivery room?" He couldn't answer. Because she was right. She took a shaky breath. "You don't get to rewrite the past because you suddenly feel something." "I'm not trying to rewrite anything," he said quietly. "I'm trying to make it right." Her lips trembled, not from weakness but from the effort of staying strong. "Then start by leaving me alone." She walked away, her figure swallowed by the crowd, but her words clung to him like smoke. He stood there, unmoving, the name Dad echoing faintly in his ears, though no one had said it yet. For the next few days he couldn't focus. Meetings blurred. Coffee went cold. Every time his phone buzzed, he hoped it was her. It never was. He started researching her discreetly, using his network to find where she lived, what she did now. He wasn't proud of it, but guilt doesn't follow rules. He found out she worked as an independent consultant, balancing projects while raising two children on her own. The idea of her doing it all without him burned. Late one evening, he drove past the cafe her profile mentioned, a small place near the park. Through the window, he saw her, laughing softly with two little faces beside her. He couldn't breathe. The twins, a boy and a girl, mirrored each other perfectly. Same bright eyes, same dimple when they smiled. His dimple. He sat in the car for a long time, watching from a distance, like a ghost haunting his own story. Every giggle pierced him deeper. He wanted to go in, but fear rooted him to the seat. Finally, he stepped out, the bell over the cafe door chiming softly. Zara's head lifted, eyes widening in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice low, protective. "I just wanted to see them," he said quietly. "I needed to see what I missed." Her expression softened for a moment, until one of the twins spilled their drink, and she turned away to clean up. He knelt beside the other child instinctively, offering a napkin. The boy looked up at him, curious. "You talk like Mommy," he said innocently. Liam froze. His throat tightened. "Do I?" The boy nodded, grinning. "Yeah, you sound like her when she says my name." Zara straightened, realizing what was happening. Her face went pale. "Eli, come here," she said sharply, reaching for her son. But before she could, the little girl, identical curls bouncing, ran toward Liam, small arms wrapping around his leg. "Dad," she said with a bright, unfiltered joy that shattered the air. Every sound in the cafe stopped. Zara's breath caught, her eyes wide with panic. Liam froze, his pulse thundering in his ears. The world narrowed to the warmth of tiny arms, and one word he thought he'd never hear again. Zara's voice trembled, breaking the silence. "Let her go, Liam." But he couldn't move, because for the first time in 4 years, he finally felt alive. The word Dad still rang in Liam's ears long after they left the cafe. He stood in the drizzle outside, watching Zara hurry the twins into a cab, her hands trembling as she fastened their seatbelts. He didn't follow. Not this time. He just stood there, soaked, heart pounding like the city's heartbeat had synced with his guilt. In the days that followed, the city whispered. The man who once controlled every headline now became one. The untouchable CEO misses 2 board meetings. The Blake Empire losing focus. Every whisper reached his ears, but he didn't care. He had already lost more than reputation could measure. At night, his penthouse felt colder. The city lights blinked against his window like fading promises. He'd stare at old photos, but none of them showed her. She had erased herself perfectly, except from his heart. Every morning, he found excuses to pass by the daycare. He told himself it was coincidence, but even his lies were tired now. Through the glass, he saw them, the twins, running, laughing, painting suns that looked like gold coins. The boy, Eli, always wore his smile. The girl, Mia, had Zara's eyes. He never stepped inside. He didn't deserve to. But guilt is louder than reason. On the 4th day, Zara saw him. She had come early to pick them up, her hair pulled back, dark eyes sharp as the day she first interviewed for his company years ago. When she spotted him standing across the street, a wave of disbelief and fury crossed her face. He tried to speak, but she walked straight to him, every step deliberate, every emotion masked by control. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. He swallowed. "I just wanted to make sure they were okay." "They're fine," she said coldly. "Better than fine. They don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he murmured. "It's love." She laughed, short, bitter. "You don't get to use that word anymore." He looked at her, really looked at her. The years had given her an elegance that no heartbreak could steal. "You think I don't feel it? Every day, Zara, I—" "Stop." Her voice shook. "You don't get to show up now and pretend the past didn't happen." He exhaled, the weight of unspoken apologies pressing on his chest. "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to face it." She turned away, staring at the children through the daycare window. "They're all I have, Liam. Every smile, every tear. I earned it without you. Don't come near them if it's going to destroy that." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm trying to understand what I lost." Her jaw tightened. "You lost me the night you walked away." The words struck like a verdict. Silence stretched between them, heavy and trembling. The city's hum faded. Only the rustle of leaves and the faint laughter of children filled the space. He wanted to say he was sorry. He wanted to tell her how he had thought of her every night, how every victory felt hollow without her. But he knew apologies wouldn't heal what he'd broken. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said softly. "Just a chance to know them." "You don't deserve that chance," she whispered, but her voice cracked at the edges. She turned to leave, but his hand caught hers gently. The touch froze time. It wasn't rough or desperate. It was a plea, a ghost of everything they once were. "Zara," he said, his voice almost breaking, "I never stopped loving you." Her lips parted in disbelief, anger and sorrow colliding in her eyes. "You have no right to say that." "Then why are you trembling?" he asked quietly. Her breath hitched. She hated him for knowing her too well. The wind tugged at her scarf, sending it fluttering against his suit. The same scent, warm vanilla and rain, filled his chest with memories he'd tried to kill. "Let me go," she said weakly, but her fingers didn't move. He looked down at their joined hands, 2 stories intertwined by regret. "Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll walk away." She tried. God, she tried. But the words wouldn't come. For a moment, the noise of the street vanished. It was just them again. 2 people caught in the wreckage of love, the space between them too full of what-ifs. Her lashes fluttered. Her heart pounded. He could feel it in the air. "Liam," she whispered, barely audible. He leaned closer, his breath brushing her skin. "Tell me to stop." She didn't. His lips didn't reach hers, not yet. Instead, he took her hand, turned it gently, and pressed a slow, trembling kiss against her skin. Her eyes closed, a single tear slipping down as the memory of what they once shared returned. Soft, cruel, inevitable. She could have pulled away. She should have. But she didn't. For that single second, time forgot how to move. Her phone buzzed between them, a message lighting up the screen. Zara froze. Liam glanced down. The text read, "We need to talk about the twins' father. It's urgent." And suddenly the air turned cold again. The kiss had been fleeting, almost accidental, a whisper of all that once was. But it followed them both like a shadow, heavy with meaning neither dared to name. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. The city outside his penthouse glowed with artificial light, but inside the silence was raw and punishing. He poured himself a drink, staring at his reflection in the glass window. A man who had everything yet owned nothing that mattered. He saw himself on the magazine covers again, the headlines praising his brilliance, his ruthlessness, his power. Words that once fueled his pride now felt like chains around his neck. The man staring back wasn't a king. He was a ghost wearing a crown of guilt. Every deal he closed, every speech he made, echoed with the sound of Zara's trembling voice. "You lost that right when you walked away." He set the glass down. It shattered on the floor, shards scattering like his past, impossible to gather, dangerous to touch. For years he had built his empire on control, but control had cost him love, laughter, fatherhood. Now, for the first time, he didn't want the empire. He wanted peace. By morning, the decision was made. His board stared at him in disbelief as he stood before them, tie loosened, voice stripped of arrogance. "I failed," he said simply, "not as a businessman, as a man." The words tasted foreign, but freeing. He confessed to the press, owning his mistakes, refusing to hide behind polished PR statements. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted. Liam Blake, the untouchable CEO, was stepping down. That afternoon, the internet roared. Some mocked him, others admired him, but none of it mattered. He walked through the building he once ruled, each corner haunted by the memory of her. The way Zara used to smile in that very hallway, coffee in hand, unaware she'd soon become his downfall and his salvation. He paused by the office window where he'd first watched her walk away years ago. "I'm sorry," he whispered to no one, to everyone. Across the city, Zara sat in her living room with her mother, her twins coloring quietly by the sofa. The news played in the background, his confession, his resignation, his fall. She told herself not to care, but her throat burned. Her mother glanced at her gently. "Maybe he's changed," she said. Zara wanted to scoff, to argue, but instead her voice came out small. "Change doesn't erase the past." Yet something in her chest trembled. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to understanding. She remembered the man who once laughed with her under city lights, who whispered dreams against her skin before ambition devoured him. She had spent years building walls around her pain, telling herself she was stronger without him. But the image of him on that screen, stripped, raw, almost human, cracked something inside. That night, she sat alone on her couch after putting the twins to bed. Rain tapped softly on the window, the kind of slow, endless rain that felt like cleansing. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and stared into the darkness. Every reason she had to hate him replayed in her mind, and yet, beneath all that pain, something refused to die. A love buried, but not forgotten. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I never deserved you, but I need to say this in person." She froze, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the words. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned off the lights, hoping the rain would drown out the noise of her own pulse. Outside, the street glistened under the downpour. A car engine cut through the quiet, familiar, expensive, reckless. Headlights flashed across her window, then vanished. She rose from the couch, unsure why, drawn by something she didn't want to name. Each step toward the door felt heavy, like walking into the past she'd buried. She hesitated with her hand on the knob. Maybe it was a delivery. Maybe it was nothing. But her heart already knew. The twins stirred softly in the other room, and she thought of them, of what it would mean if he truly meant those words. She opened the door. He was standing there in the rain. No umbrella, no pride, just soaked through, eyes hollow but burning with regret. "Zara," he whispered, voice cracking, "I don't want forgiveness. I just need you to know. I never stopped loving you." The rain poured harder, washing the city in silver streaks. Zara stood frozen at her doorway, his words hanging between them like a fragile thread. Liam's clothes clung to his body, his breath uneven, his eyes red-rimmed but steady. For a moment, neither spoke, only the sound of rain and everything it carried. She wanted to shut the door. She should have. But something in his face, the exhaustion, the rawness, made her pause. He wasn't the polished CEO from the tabloids anymore. He was a man stripped bare of armor. "Go home, Liam," she said quietly, voice shaking with the effort to stay strong. "You don't belong here anymore." He didn't move. "Zara," he whispered, "please. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need a chance to make it right, not for me, for them." His voice broke on the last word. She looked past him into the rain, searching for escape in the storm, but there was none. Behind her, she could hear the twins shifting in their beds, their tiny voices murmuring in dreams. Her hand trembled on the door frame. He stepped forward, but didn't cross the threshold. "Let me be what I should have been," he said. "Their father. Even if you never look at me again the same way." Zara swallowed hard. The old ache returned, the one she thought she'd buried. "You think it's that simple," she said, anger flaring through her tears. "You walked away when I needed you most. You left me to face the world with your children inside me." "I know." His voice cracked, softer than the rain. "And I hate myself for it every single day." Lightning flashed behind him, painting his face in white light. He looked older now, not just in age, but in regret. Years of guilt carved deep into his eyes. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "You can come in," she said, her tone cautious. "But this doesn't change anything." He entered slowly, as if stepping into sacred ground. The warmth of her home wrapped around him, small, humble, alive. Toys scattered across the floor, children's drawings pinned to the wall. A world he'd never known, yet one that felt achingly familiar. Zara watched him silently, measuring every breath he took. He walked toward a small photo frame on the shelf, the twins, grinning with missing teeth. His fingers brushed the glass, and he smiled faintly, as if afraid it might disappear. "They're beautiful," he murmured. "They're mine," she said sharply. Then, after a pause, "And yours. But don't forget, they survived without you." He nodded. "I don't want to take anything from you, Zara. I just want to be part of what I broke for a long time." There was only silence. Then a soft sound. the patter of small feet. Zara turned. The twins stood at the edge of the hallway, sleepy-eyed and confused. "Mommy," one whispered. Zara's heart clenched. She forced a smile. "It's okay, baby. Go back to bed." But their eyes were fixed on Liam. Something unspoken passed between them. Curiosity, instinct. Then one of them smiled, the same crooked smile Liam had. "You came back," the little girl said simply. Liam dropped to one knee, his throat tightening. "Yeah," he whispered, voice trembling. "I came back." Zara turned away, tears blurring her vision. She wanted to stay angry, but the sight of him with them, it was too much. The man who had once walked away now looked like he would crawl through fire just to stand in their doorway. Days passed and he began showing up quietly. Not as a CEO, not as a savior, just as a man trying to learn. He brought books, helped with homework, waited outside the daycare just to wave goodbye. At first, Zara hated the sight of him there, hated how easily the twins had accepted him. But slowly she began to see something she didn't expect. Humility. He never pushed, never asked for more than she was willing to give. When she forgot the twins' lunch one morning, he appeared at the school with it. When her car broke down, he waited by the roadside until help came. He was present, steady, almost gentle. Each gesture chipped away at her defenses. She caught herself watching him sometimes, the way he listened to the twins' endless stories, the way he laughed softly when they said something silly. It hurt to see the man he could have been all along. One evening after dinner, he helped the kids wash dishes while Zara stood by the doorway, arms crossed. Her mother's words echoed in her head. Maybe he's changed. When the twins ran off to play, he turned to her. "Thank you for letting me be here," he said quietly. She looked at him, unsure how to answer. "Don't thank me," she replied. "Thank them. They're the reason I didn't shut the door." He nodded, understanding. Then, almost in a whisper, "I'd give up everything to keep earning this chance." And she believed him, not because of what he said, but how he said it. The old arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw and honest. Weeks later, the twins' school hosted a small family event. Zara almost didn't go, but the twins begged her, and she couldn't resist their excitement. The gym buzzed with laughter and music. Children ran around with painted faces. Liam stood near the back, watching quietly, afraid to intrude. When the twins spotted him, they squealed and pulled him into their world, dragging him toward face painting, games, laughter. Zara watched from afar, her chest heavy with emotion she couldn't name. Later, during the closing song, the parents stood together while the children sang. Liam stood beside her, the air between them charged but soft. He didn't dare touch her, not without permission. But as the lights dimmed and the twins waved from the stage, Zara's hand brushed his. For a moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, deliberately, she slipped her fingers into his. He froze, heart pounding. She didn't pull away. Not this time. And for the first time in years, the storm inside both of them began to quiet. Just as someone in the crowd raised a phone, snapping a photo that would soon change everything. The night air was soft, brushing against the streets with the same gentleness that now lingered between them. Liam had traded his suits for simplicity, rolled-up sleeves, a tired smile, and hands that knew the weight of responsibility, not just power. Every morning he waited outside Zara's apartment, never late, helping the twins buckle their tiny seatbelts, carrying their backpacks as if they were the crown he once chased and lost. Zara never said much during those mornings. Her silence wasn't cold anymore. It was watchful, thoughtful, as if she were trying to understand this new version of the man she once knew. He didn't push. He didn't apologize every day. Instead, he showed up. He fixed things, the leaky faucet, the twins' broken toy truck, her car when it refused to start before work. Redemption wasn't in grand gestures. It was in his quiet persistence. Sometimes she caught him watching her from the corner of his eye, not with desire but reverence, as if he still couldn't believe she'd let him near her world again. And sometimes she'd catch herself smiling when he laughed with the twins, that soft, unguarded laughter that once melted her in the early days of their love. At work, his name no longer commanded the same fear. People spoke of Liam Blake not as the ruthless CEO, but as the man who learned humility. He still carried the authority, but it was tempered by kindness, the kind born from loss and regret. Zara saw that change, and though her heart resisted, something in her began to thaw. The twins adored him, especially Mia, who loved to sit on his shoulders and call him Daddy Lion. The first time she said it, his eyes shimmered, and Zara had to turn away, pretending she didn't see the tear that slid down his cheek. Noah, quieter and more observant, would watch him as if studying him, testing if this new father was real, if he'd stay. He stayed. Through flu seasons, late-night school projects, and weekend parks. He was there when Noah got his first medal and when Mia lost her first tooth. Slowly, laughter returned to their home, filling the space where grief once lived. Zara tried to convince herself it was for the children, that letting him close was practical, necessary. But late at night, when the twins were asleep, and she saw the soft light from his car parked across the street, waiting until he was sure they were safe, her chest tightened. It wasn't pity. It wasn't nostalgia. It was love, stubborn and unwilling to die. He never pushed her for more. He never mentioned the past unless she did. Sometimes she wanted to hate him for that, for being so patient, so changed, that it hurt. Because it made forgiveness feel closer, and forgiveness scared her more than anger ever did. Then, one evening, he showed up with flowers. Simple daisies, her favorite. "No roses," he said, almost shy. "They remind me of everything I ruined." She wanted to scold him, to tell him not to make her remember. But his honesty broke her guard. She smiled faintly and took the flowers. That night they had dinner. It wasn't fancy, just a quiet restaurant downtown, soft jazz in the background. They talked about the twins, about life, about small things that didn't need to hurt. For the first time in years she laughed. Not politely, but freely, like she used to before everything fell apart. He looked at her then, across the candlelight, and something in his expression softened completely. "You're still the most beautiful woman in every room I walk into," he said quietly. Her heart stuttered. She wanted to tell him not to say things like that, but her lips trembled instead. "People change," she whispered, unsure if she was reminding him or herself. "Then let me keep proving it," he replied. The restaurant lights dimmed as rain began to fall outside, poetic, almost like the night he'd left her years ago. But this time there was no storm between them, only the echo of two hearts slowly learning to beat in rhythm again. When they stepped outside, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement. He offered her his jacket, and she hesitated before slipping into it. It smelled like him, clean, warm, familiar. She almost forgot how safe that scent once made her feel. Then came the voice, sharp, intrusive, slicing through their quiet moment. "Mr. Blake, Miss Ellis, are you two back together?" A reporter, camera flashing, crowd murmuring nearby. The flash reminded her of all those years ago, headlines that once called her the gold digger, the affair, the mistake. For a heartbeat, she froze. He moved instinctively, stepping between her and the camera, shielding her like he used to when he thought love could protect her from everything. The twins would see this. The world would see this. The old Liam might have cared about the image. The new Liam only cared about her. But before he could speak, Zara reached out and took his hand. Firmly. The cameras caught it, her brown skin against his, two pasts colliding under the city lights. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. A smile curved her lips, not playful, not defiant, but certain. "Are you two back together?" the reporter repeated. She looked at Liam, eyes soft but steady, and said clearly, "Not yet." As the flash went off again, he turned to her, eyes wide with quiet hope. She didn't notice the second reporter in the shadows, the one snapping a photo of her hand resting over his heart. The headline would break by morning, and this time neither of them would be ready for what it unleashed. The night after that restaurant moment, the world seemed quieter. The headlines had faded, and the noise of judgment had softened into whispers. Zara no longer felt the sting of being seen with him. Instead, she felt something far more dangerous. Peace. She didn't know when it happened, when her anger had turned into acceptance, but she could feel it in the way her chest no longer tightened at the mention of his name. Liam had changed in ways words couldn't hold. He no longer measured worth in numbers or deals, but in moments, in bedtime stories, in the tiny fingers that clung to his tie before school. He'd given up power, yet somehow gained everything that once felt out of reach. The world called it redemption, but for him it was simply love returning home after a long, punishing storm. Weeks passed, and their rhythm found balance. He'd pick up the twins, she'd make coffee, and they'd share quiet conversations about nothing and everything, the kind that healed old scars without needing to explain how they were made. There was laughter again, cautious but genuine, fragile but real. One evening he asked her to come with him somewhere. She hesitated, eyes narrowing playfully. "Where?" "Somewhere familiar," he said softly. And that's how, months later, they found themselves standing on the same beach where everything began, the place where ambition first met innocence, where love had once bloomed and bled in the same breath. The air was warm, heavy with salt and memory. The twins played nearby, chasing each other with seashells, their laughter mixing with the steady song of waves. Zara watched them, her dress brushing her ankles, the wind lifting strands of her hair the same way it did all those years ago. She turned, and there he was, watching her as if she were still that girl who had turned his empire upside down just by smiling. He stepped closer, the sand shifting beneath his feet. "You know," he said, voice low, "I used to come here alone after everything. I thought if I stared long enough at the ocean it would wash the guilt away." Her gaze softened. "Did it?" He smiled faintly. "No, but it reminded me what I'd lost." The world seemed to still for a heartbeat. The sunset burned gold behind him, the wind tugging at his shirt as he reached into his pocket. For once there were no photographers, no assistants, no flashing cameras. Just him, a man stripped of pride and power, kneeling before the only person who ever truly saw him. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly, his voice trembling with something raw and real. "But I need to say it anyway. Forgive me. Not for what I did, I can never undo that. But for every tomorrow I want to build with you." Zara's eyes shimmered. For years, she'd imagined this moment, him begging, her walking away, or perhaps saying nothing at all. But the man kneeling before her wasn't the one who had left her in the rain. This was someone else, someone who had been broken and rebuilt by love, by loss, by the sound of his children calling him Dad. The twins ran between them, squealing as the waves nipped at their feet. She knelt, too, instinctively, helping one of them steady a sandcastle. Her hand brushed Liam's, and for a moment neither of them moved. The years of distance, pain, pride, it all melted like tide foam. "You've changed," she whispered. He looked up, eyes glistening. "You made me." Her lips trembled. "No, life did. I just survived it with you in my shadow." The sky deepened, violet and rose spreading across the horizon. The world around them blurred until only the four of them existed, a family that had been broken by fear, mended by time, and finally held together by truth. She turned to him fully now, eyes fierce and soft all at once. "This time," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "don't let go." He reached out slowly, fingers tracing the back of her hand, then locking with hers as if anchoring himself to the only thing that ever mattered. Behind them, the twins shouted, "Mom! Dad! Look!" as the waves lapped at their castle. The water rose, erasing the little walls and towers they had built, washing away their fragile creation. Yet, for the first time, neither of them tried to save it. They simply watched, hands entwined, letting the tide take what it wanted, because what was left couldn't be taken anymore. The wind picked up, scattering their laughter, their words, their forgiveness into the night. He stood, pulling her gently against his chest. She didn't resist. The past no longer haunted them. It had become part of the story that brought them here. And as the waves climbed higher, washing over their footprints in the sand, something unspoken passed between them. Not a promise of perfection, but of presence, of staying. The tide washed over their footprints, but this time they stood together,